This is the panel, How to Integrate Compliance Procedures into Business Activities. I'd like to welcome Karla Palmer, Travis Lee, and Kimberly Kieffer. It's all yours. Take it away.
Hi, how are you? My name is Karla Palmer, and with me are two industry experts, Travis Leeah at QuVA Pharma and Kimberly Kieffer, who is at Empower. And both of them can give you a little bit of introduction of what their background is with respect to compounding, outsourcing, et cetera, in this dynamic and evolving market. My name is Karla Palmer. I'm an attorney in Washington, D.C. for a food and drug law boutique, and I have about 27 years of experience practicing law. And since the 2013 timeframe, a substantial part of my practice has been devoted to representing compounding pharmacies and outsourcing facilities. And so I hope that I can guide these two panelists in an interesting discussion of the challenges that they are facing today and how to include, business decisions in their planning vis-a-vis regulatory challenges that they face. So Kimberly, why don't you go ahead and provide us a little introduction concerning your background and experience for compounding.
Thank you, Karla. So I'm Kim Kieffer, and I am the Regulatory Affairs Director at Empower Pharmacy in Texas currently. But I come from a fairly long background in the compounding industry. Prior to my work now, I worked for many of the raw material suppliers that supply compounding pharmacies as a technical consultant. So I've been working with pharmacies all over the country for many, many years. And I have seen, this development since we received the DQSA and how that's really changed quality standards, or it has the ability to up quality standards and push the industry a little bit more. And so since I've been at Empower, I've gotten a much bigger education in how GMP works and what the realities of the 503B industry are. And it's very interesting and exciting to me. So that's my background.
Travis?
Hello, everyone. My name is Travis Leeah. I am a pharmacist, practicing pharmacist. I'm with the QuVA Pharma. I'm over clinical services and pharmacist in charge. I've been in the industry, the compounding industry, since about 1999. Was a hospital pharmacist before that. Have run operations in compounding pharmacies, have been president, CEO, owner, and vice president, and also director. I've about every different version, in the industry. I've learned a lot. I've gone through USP 797 and all the changes to 503B, and so it's been a great ride. I have no regrets and have enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to this panel.
Thanks both of you for that introduction. And so what we'd like to do today is I want to ask some questions of each of you, and then if you all could respond based on your experience and expertise in compounding and working in outsourcing facilities, that would be great. Okay, so our first question that we would like to consider today is, why, especially in the compounding space, does it seem that compliance and important compliance decisions involving compounding must be fully integrated into the business activities of the company? Kim, do you want to start?
Oh, I thought you wanted Travis to start.
Sure, Travis can start.
Yeah. Especially with 503B facilities, there's been so many compliance changes, especially back. Everybody remembers the horrible NECC tragedy, and that was just a complete tragedy from a compounding standpoint, and many other issues where compounded drugs were not produced in a way where you have good quality standards. We've got a lot of regulations that we have to meet, both on the federal and the state level. And first of all, it takes money. Everybody wonders about the money, right? So it takes a lot of money and a lot of, a lot of work within your group and your regulatory group to make sure that you include the compliance decisions amongst your business plan and plan off of what you can do from a compliance standpoint. You could have a great sales team come along and say, hey, we can sell the heck out of this. We could sell the heck out of, name it, vancomycin or whatever. We could sell a bunch of it. The problem is, you've got a lot of, there's a lot of things you have to look at from a compliance standpoint to make sure that, you can sell that and it can be part of your business plan. You have to integrate, commercial copies. You have to integrate your development work. Development work isn't cheap in a 503B facility. You have to have it. You have to have the V word, the validation work. That all wraps into your compliance, and we're the ones that are responsible for the patient safety, and that's what comes first. And it's if you don't wrap that into your business activities, I could tell you from a budgeting standpoint, it's not going to happen. There's a lot of expense behind the scenes. Everybody sees the finished syringe or IV bag and they say, oh, it's great. And, it only costs you $10 to make that. No, it didn't. There's a lot of cost behind the scenes, especially that goes from, into compliance. And, it's a whole nother animal with 503B and GMP practices. And I kind of look at it from, they're differing business models. You have the pharmacy business model, you have a pharma business model, you have a 503B business model, and they're separate. They're black and white. Now, I think a lot of people overlook that you have to change your business model to be successful.
Travis, let me ask a follow-on question there. I mean, I've known you since, at the time of inception of and promulgation of Section 503B after NECC,
right.
Back in 2013, and you were, you did the transition from a 503A compounding pharmacy, because there were no 503Bs, to a 503B. Right. So looking back on this time period over the last long 9 years, what was the greatest regulatory challenge for you?
The greatest regulatory challenge, I think, from what's the word of, I was in the 797 world for so long. It was getting myself out of the 797 pharmacy practice and getting myself into the pharma business. That, to me, that was a real struggle, because you lose, pharmacists, probably admit that they're control freaks, and we like to control things, but when you have a pharma model, a pharmacist has a different role to play. A pharmacist doesn't have, in 797, a pharmacist is part-time quality, part-time engineering, part-time plumber, part-time glue man, you name it. There's a lot of different hats you wear in the 797 business. Well, in a GMP business, the pharmacist is the clinical end. The pharmacist is the clinical master. And you've got engineers, you've got microbiologists, you've got quality teams, you've got all these other, what I call SMEs, subject matter experts, that you lean on to make sure that you cover all your GMPs. You don't have to do it all yourself. And when I first started with 503B, we were still trying to, do it all as pharmacists. And you've got to bring in those subject matter experts to get it done right. And that to me was a big change for me. And Kim can probably agree to this. It takes a lot of fortitude. There's a lot of frustration from a GMP standpoint, because once you have everything ready to go and you think you're ready to rock and roll, oops, there's a little impurity that was found in your API or something like that, which brings everything to a screeching halt. And guess what? You start all over. So you have to do your investigations and everything. So it's just that, to me, that change for me was the toughest. It was really hard. It was a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of upset stomachs, some nausea, saying, okay, how are we going to do this? The cleaning procedures you have to prove everything from a GMP standpoint. You can't just buy the best cleaner on the market and start cleaning a clean room. You have to prove that, okay, what does this cleaner actually kill? What surfaces does it kill on? Are you going to use it right? Or your technician's going to use it right? I mean, yeah, you can validate a cleaner off at, a large company, and that's great documentation. But the first thing from a GMP standpoint is, can you repeat this in your facility? Oh, we didn't think about that. So you have to go back and make sure that your processes, your procedures can be effective 100% from what the validation work that your cleaning company did, or your vendor. So there's a lot of work. It's all about, and it goes back to, it's all about scientific evidence. Do you have the evidence in hand? So I don't know if I've answered it kind of long, but that's it.
And Kimberly, do you have a take on this as well? I mean, let's discuss from your perspective why in this space, this outsourcing facility space, so to speak, does it seem that compliance, an important compliance decision, must be fully integrated into the business activities of the company?
Well, I think Travis has hit on most of them. I mean, it's really understanding what your markets are requiring and if that makes sense for you, because it all does come down to money, and the cost to produce one product in a GMP environment appropriately is so vastly different. And I think Travis hit the nail on the head when he said, I have this bag here and it cost me $10 to make it, or it cost me 42 cents to make it, or some crazy number. But when you really consider what your return on investment is for that one final unit, or 500 or whatever you make in your first batch, it's really tremendous. So you have to understand what that looks like from a business perspective. Like, can we really make money on this? And I think a big thing that I noticed that we struggle with is, you have a tremendous outpouring from the medical community. We want all of these things, but is it really feasible to do GMP on all of these things? Does it make sense? And that's a hard thing to balance, because there is this desire as compounding pharmacy to fill these needs, but in a lot of cases, it doesn't make sense from a financial standpoint. So you have to really understand that and be able to weigh that, from a business perspective, and still have some sort of compassion. FDA has given a lot of, they've given guidance in their GMP documents for 503B specifically that help you to do these smaller batches to fill some of those needs. But I think even when you break those down fully, you see that the financial commitment is so much greater. So there's, so that balancing is tremendously difficult. Also, like Travis was mentioning, the validation side of it. And if there is a problem and you have to stop. And that's another thing that I think is tremendously difficult because, you know, again, you have this financial situation that you have to push through, but then we have to stop and investigate. And those are tricky. Those are very, very tricky. And also from just the standpoint of the compliance side, really understanding what is allowed to do. I mean, we have statutory language that tells us, and we have these guidance documents that tells us, so we have to really understand what those mean and what you can do, because if you start on a road of, well, maybe I can do it, maybe I can't do it, or I don't understand if I can really do it, or I don't understand if I can do it, and I have seen other 503Bs get trapped into this. You know, we didn't really understand initially going in what was expected. And so then the guidances and the rules kind of changed for us over the years. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh, we really couldn't do this. And so then there's been investment into a particular product that actually isn't going to have any real teeth going forward because we don't have a law to support it. So that's a tricky one too. And I think that's kind of, if you're outside of the hospital space where there's lots of need for outsourcing, but if there's all these other sort of markets that rely on bulk substances or this or that, the other thing, if those things are in a gray area, it's hard to plan for the future. So knowing all of that up front can save you a ton of money, and it's just really understanding that. And that is tricky, I think, in general.
Thanks a lot. It sounds both complicated and risky, to be perfectly frank. And I believe, like our industry right now,
Yeah, it is.
Our industry needs a crystal ball to be able to protect the future and vis-a-vis how FDA is going to react to outsourcing, because it giveth and taketh away, so to speak, with the implementation of its bulk syndrome list and changes to that list, and shifting guidance on these issues as well. Travis, do you want to move us to the next question, please? So this is a follow-on to our prior question, and so in a little bit more detail, and I'll start with you, Kimberly, how do you go about integrating compliance procedures into business activities, and why is this important to you in your organization?
I think I preemptively answered this a little bit, but I think the best way is to truly understand what the guidances are telling you, and they are shifting, and truly understand what the law allows for you to do, and put your bets on that, whatever is the most black and white for the long term, because it is such a tremendous process in terms of investment. But it is, because if you're looking at longevity, you know, what is the best case for it? And right now we have so much gray, and we have a lot of guidance, and thank God we have some guidance, because at least we have something to work with right now, but that is ever shifting. And it's tricky, and I'm hoping that it will continue to develop more, because this idea of having GMP in the pharmacy space is great. I mean, it's just so good for the patient. GMP is massive and cumbersome, but it's also really, really good, and it can and when it's effective, it is amazing for the final product and just everyone going to sleep at night. So I'm hoping that more of that will help, or we'll get more, not concessions, but more things that are black and white, so that we know how to move forward. But I think the most important reason that you would want to be fully aware of what the compliance is offering you is just your return on investment, because you don't want to crash and burn at the end, and you don't want the misery. And it is actually easier to comply and move forward in that respect than to like try to work in the gray, even though sometimes we have to work in the gray. The easiest path is the compliance path.
But isn't CGMP, even as defined by FDA in its guidance documents for outsourcing facilities, isn't it still necessary? I get it, it's completely necessary, but isn't it onerous from a financial standpoint that it makes the compounding of certain needed products simply prohibited, especially those that are on a shortage list, which is what FDA wants to see, and especially some products that may be requested by a hospital system or a clinic or a certain facility, but not in an amount or a lot size or what have you that will cause this to be a profitable, and I don't even mean big profitable, just a somewhat profitable venture for the outsourcing facility?
I think that there's a way. I think there's a way to work within some of the concessions that they've given us. I don't think it always works, but I think it can work in some instances. The shortage thing is really in contention because you have such a short tail time. If you want to fill shortages, you're allowed to go ahead and do that, but it's going to take you quite a bit of time to like do all the validations necessary to get the product out the door, and by then you may have a shortage that's no longer there. And so this has been the big argument. And FDA is giving you 60 days to sell your product, and then you're done once that shortage is resolved. So I think there's been a lot of requests to the agency to like increase that tail time to make it a little bit more feasible. And I think they've started to do that a little bit with some of the COVID medications that are needed. And I think I'm hoping that will open up doors for the future, because I think there's been a tremendous interest to fill these shortages, but almost everyone has comments that, you know, we don't have a crystal ball. If we do this, are we going to be out of business in a little while? I think there are substances, and I know Travis would agree, that you can bet are going to be on shortage, and you can make a really solid crystal ball bet on those, and those might be a good place to start. So there is opportunity in there. But for the small one-offs, I think sometimes it can work depending on how small it is and how much time you can just, you know, can you invest a clean room staff to go in to make 60 units of something that you can only charge $50 a unit for? I mean, that's an internal discussion. I think it just depends on the size of your operation and how you've got scheduling happening. I think sometimes it can work, but again, it really just depends on the operation, and it may not be profitable, not especially.
Right. Travis, any comments on this?
Yes. Echoing what Kim was saying, yeah, and I've seen it a lot in other 503B facilities where they were trying to go 60 miles an hour and be compliant, put in compliance procedures at the same time. When I was with Unique, we couldn't do that. We shut down. We shut completely down. I don't know how you can do that on the run. There's too much. There's just too much change. So yeah, I integrating compliance procedures in the business activities, put it in your business plan, put it at the front. I said the other day on another talk, you got to get the right budget. That's going to be the hard thing is budgeting how much you're going to need, because we spent a lot of time on our budget and we exceeded it quite a bit. And so it's one of those, yeah, you got to get everything done at the front end. I wouldn't put a product out until you have everything in place, because once you do start producing and product goes out the door, it's going to, a lot of changes, they may seem small, like a small little process change or, a quality change in or procedure within your process, but they get really, really big, especially when you're running at full speed or even half speed. So I think, you've got to integrate all that into the front end. And from a compliance standpoint, when you're talking, you've got DEA requirements, you got FDA, you also have your states. If you want to sell into the states, they all have requirements. All of them do. You better get a team together to make sure that they watch what's going on in each state, what's going on at a federal level on a continuous standpoint. You put in your budget, to hire that team, because you're going to need that team. It's going to, be pharmacists, quality folks that are watching what's happening and making sure that, you're going to dot every I, cross every T, and then you don't get caught red-handed with changes in, let's say, Ohio or Indiana has a change that can be an issue. And a lot of times, you know, compounding pharmacies and 503B outsourcing facilities have been caught, you know, with not following certain procedures in certain states too. And at the same time, all the states, they're continuing to change their requirements and what they need. They're changing their licenses, and we're going to talk about this in my talk later. But the license changes, you know, so you've got to plan to have that team put in place for sure.
So the bottom line is you need a very, you know, a high functioning quality and regulatory team. Is that what you'd say?
Yes.
And you need to
Totally
become
agree.
very friendly with your various state boards that may regulate you, because all of them play an active role in compounding / outsourcing facility regulation. So so you want to pay attention to what your state, what all the various states in which you're shipping product are doing, because those states, an issue in a state can really wreak havoc because of reciprocity of those decisions in one state and the effect that they can have on licensing in other states as well. So those are all very good points. And thank you for discussing the difficulties of integrating your business, you know, your compliance procedures into the business activities of your companies. It is extremely important and something that, you know, it's no rest for the weary on these issues. So Travis, let's move to the next question, please. Oh, here you go. This is a timely communication here. What role do FDA communications play in your regulatory business activities? So in particular, consider FDA's guidance documents for outsourcing facilities, inspection communications such as 483s, warning letters issued to outsourcing facilities, etc. How do you integrate those communications from FDA in whatever form? And there are many of them and they're varied. How do those play into your business operations? Kim, do you want to start?
Sure. So just to start with the guidance documents, so those are incredibly important and need to be constantly monitored. We see draft guidances, we see final guidances, and though they are not binding, they are what the agency is thinking. So it's really important to know what they say, and to be evaluating your business against them as we see them come out. I think they're in some ways very, very helpful. And then there are other guidance documents outside of what is just offered specifically to 503B. I mean, there's all sorts of guidance documents for pharmaceutical manufacturing industry, and those are actually really great reference documents. And I think we and myself reference them often. And I think Ian was mentioning them in his talk yesterday. And those are available and tremendously helpful, because not only is it telling you, I mean, it's giving you information that's consistent with GMP, and it's, and what has already been in the ethos. And so they're comfortable with that. And those are things that you're also subject to. And then in terms of 483s and warning letters, I mean, those are just a part of the reality of living in our new environment. And as an outsourcing facility, you're registered, so your primary regulator is FDA, and they use, these observational 483s and inspection reports to help us grow. But they're also to point out places where either we need to look at compliance or improve operations, et cetera. And I think that where we see the biggest issues with those are with state boards, not necessarily understanding that those aren't enforcement actions, but they are observations. And so I think from the state board, it's still concerning to them. And the other side of it, you're going to have your clients are going to also be reading these 483s. The agency has made it very visible on their website. If you want to read 483s for Merck and Pfizer, that's a little bit harder to find. But if you want to find them for compounding pharmacies, it's like with flashing lights, so you can easily find those. with the Google, with like a 2-second Google search. So those are there. And so you have to be understanding how you're going to plan, you know, how you respond to your clients, because they come and they evaluate you and they have questions about that. So that also has to be like, you know, how do we make sure that they're comfortable and understand, like, this is what it says, but this is actually what we're doing and how we responded, and whatever you want, you know, to get into. So those things, I think it's just a matter of like making sure you respond to them, right? And doing the improvements that they offer them. Because in some cases, and I think in a lot of cases, you know, they give you some very good observations that can help you improve. We're all learning here, and everybody gets these. Everybody in the industry gets them. And the GMP environment is really there to make you improve and help you continuously improve. So if we just can, I think if we think about 483s and warning letters, obviously, in this respect that it's just part of the development process, then obviously it helps us improve compliance. And wow, there's nothing like an inspection to get things approved and things pushed through that you've been working on that maybe you didn't finish and maybe you couldn't get a signature on, and help you, you know, push through that implementation.
Thanks very much, Kim. You know, on the 483s, I have in observations raised therein by FDA. I definitely have been before different state boards that have taken a 483 and, you know, complained about an outsourcing facility concerning an allegation in the 483. And I have on numerous occasions taken the approach that these are not binding decisions on behalf of the agent, you know, by the agency on behalf of the compounder or outsourcing facility. Instead, there are FDA's observations only. And so therefore they don't have a binding legal effect on anybody. And I have been told, and this is something that I found very interesting, and actually I get the point, but I wish states wouldn't make the point until the outsourcing facility has time to address the observation. But I did get the comeback from one state board rep that when the FDA observes mold, and they indicate that observation on a 483, that's a problem. And so when you put it in that context, unfortunately, because it really did ruin my argument that these are not, you know, final decisions of the agency, they're observations only, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The state's response was nobody wants to be in a situation where FDA is observing mold in your compounded formulations. And I thought that was really telling because it just brought it all back to an NECC type retort by the state. And indeed, I have not spent a lot of time going forward raising the fact that these are not legally binding findings on behalf of the agency that are set forth in the 483s. It did put me back on my heels a bit with the state's response in that manner.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. So FDA has the Center for Excellence, and there's the regulatory framework. And if everybody has not run immediately to take that, a lot of it is review, but it's very good. And they talk a lot about inspections and 483s and warning letters and untitled letters, and they make this distinction that these are not enforcement activities, but they are observations of things that could potentially precipitate enforcement activities. And so, yes, we want the state boards to understand what they are, but they are in fact observations of things that are potentially out of compliance. So I think not that to give the state boards a pass, but it is concerning to them. So it's part of, you know, just managing that. Correct. And their expectations.
Yeah, and I've lost the argument to the contrary. So, Travis, anything to add?
Yeah, very, very good information for sure. Yeah, the thing I keep coming back to within your company, and this goes to the leadership, to the top of your leadership of your company, is one of the goals, one of the priorities of every company 503B that should be in business. I highly recommend that you put quality as one of your priorities, if not number one, because this all pertains to quality and patient safety. I have been in a lot of FDA inspections, and one thing I could say, there's a lot of them that I did not like. There's a lot of them that I was okay with. Some were absolutely destructive. But I could also say that every FDA inspection has made us a better company. We learn a lot from inspections and 483s. Do we like them? No, we don't. But FDA's, has been very good from a communication standpoint, and the dialogue has been phenomenal from a 503B standpoint. So I've learned a lot from dialoguing with the FDA. Do I agree with everything they decide on? No, of course not. But I can't say we've learned. We always learn from 483s and inspections, and this has got to be a priority for every 503B company, bar none. Because if you don't have this done, then the money, the profits later on are not going to happen. Because it's if you don't have control your processes, you don't have the quality built in, the quality priority. I've seen a lot of 503Bs that put sales and profits above quality, and it doesn't work. They're not around for forever. It's going to catch up to them. So this part of the business you have to be ready for the FDA to come in any day. You don't want to do training on FDA inspections or change anything. You should run a facility that no matter what day it is, if the FDA walks in, it's okay, you're ready. You want to be FDA ready, and that's extremely important. And you definitely don't want to go down the road of warning letters and enforcement actions with the FDA, because they'll give you, FDA's fair, and they'll give you chances to correct things, but if you don't invest in correcting it, if you don't take the 483 serious, they're not gonna waste time on going down the road of enforcement actions.
Sure. Thank you so much. I mean, my take on this industry is that it's highly regulated. It's one of the most, other than DEA, it's really one of the most, I actually think this FDA is in outsourcing facilities, regulated by FDA. It's even more highly regulated than those entities that handle controlled substances, and most outsourcing facilities do both. So it's highly regulated. You're under the microscope with, highly active federal agencies as well, DEA and FDA. And it's just not an industry that's for the faint of heart, so to speak. You cannot be, you have to be ready at all times for a government investigator to knock at your door and permit themselves to enter because they have that right. And you have to be able to stand up your compliance team and show these agencies that you are on it, so to speak, as far as your regulatory compliance, both vis-a-vis DEA and FDA, to be perfectly frank. Travis and Kim, let's go to the next question. Oh, here, this is an interesting question for me, at least. So not being somebody that works at an outsourcing facility myself, concerning compliance readiness and everything that we've already discussed up to this point, and how significant compliance plays in your day-to-day operations, how much time do you actually spend on these issues? Is it monthly, daily, weekly? What do you focus on when considering compliance readiness, and how much of your day does it take? Travis, Kim, who wants to start?
Yeah, you put in a lot of processes and procedures, departments, investigative teams, quality teams, engineering teams. So this is something that's daily, for sure, daily. I can't see how you can do it weekly or monthly. It's got to be daily. Like I said, it's if you're compliant ready, then you're ready for the FDA to come in any day. If it's weekly, what if what if you're going to work on your compliance on Friday and they come in on Tuesday? It's got to be daily, without a doubt.
It's daily, and I think also it's not even we're going to consciously spend time today. It's like in every procedure you have compliance activities threaded into it. Everything you do, fixing a label, updating a label, sending sending facilities into the clean room. I mean, everything that you have to do, there's a compliance component, and everyone really needs to be, on board and trained in that area to understand why, that's important or required.
So was that
it's got to be built in your quality.
Sure.
Yeah.
Was that expected or unexpected for either of you when you first undertook your roles at an outsourcing facility? I mean, Travis, I know that you were at a 503A before then, that rolled up into an outsourcing facility. So it may have been a little bit different. 795 and 797 have a completely different structure, to be perfectly frank, at a compounding.
Right.
But Kim, especially you, I mean, have you been surprised by the amount of compliance readiness and engaging in compliance issues that you've needed to be involved with since being at Empower?
Oh, absolutely, because I had been, on the raw materials side, looking and trying to understand the regulations and, helping people not go to jail, but as much as possible, but not really in the thick of it practicing. So there wasn't really, it was a huge change. And from the 503A, the compounding side, it is so much different. That part I'm not super surprised with, but the B is really its own, GMP is big, and the compliance around it is massive. And then you thread in, the state boards all having to have their own special version of things. It's everywhere, and it's just part of the process of GMP to have those procedures be at the backbone of everything. But I like it. I think it's really interesting. It makes everybody a lot more honest. And there's not this, well, my friend did it, so it's fine. Oh, if I had $1 for every time, oh, the pharmacy down there is using Dyspy state, so it's got to be fine. I would be such a rich person for all the years I heard these things. And so the manufacturing side, or the commercial drug industry side, requires a lot more science to be at the heart of things. I mean, we all want to think we're doing science when we're compounding, and we are to a certain extent, but there's so many unknowns that we're not held responsible for. And then in GMP, you are held responsible for it. And it's actually enlightening and really interesting. And you probably, like I said earlier, sleep better when things are in balance and you're continually moving and learning.
Doesn't it bother you though? Let me just throw out this question. I see it a lot of time in my practice. I mean, the issue of selective enforcement, so to speak. And, FDA is not a police officer. They're not catching people speeding, etc. But there is a degree of that in the industry. And doesn't that bother you? I mean, you stop doing what you're supposed, you comply, you engage in compliance activities on a daily basis. It is part of your company's fabric, so to speak. But there are entities that seem to, quote, not comply, and all the while don't seem to have a regulatory issue with the agency. Isn't that difficult to grapple with?
So it depends on what part of it.
Yeah. For me, I've seen so much, and I think I've been in the industry for so long. I've seen so so many different things. And yeah, I've seen that selective enforcement. We just try to concentrate on making ourselves better for the most part. And I think in the end, quality always wins. So if we could just work on ourselves and make ourselves better on a continuous basis. And that's something else I didn't mention is, a lot of these GMPs that you follow that you think are a waste of money, you learn a lot. You learn a lot more about your products than you ever realized from a 797 standpoint. And that learning is invaluable. And, going forward. So we just mainly we're concerned. We worry internally about ourselves, being the best we can be.
That's a good
I
answer.
really think that's probably the best way to look at it. And I don't think in terms of the quality aspects of the GMPs that you can be concerned about selective enforcement at all. I think there's some parts of the guidance and shaky things in terms of like planning your business model where selective enforcement becomes an issue for people. But in terms of the quality aspects and just the production of your products, there's no part of that you can really even be concerned with. You have to do the quality.
Thank you. And next question. This might be our last question, I believe. So getting into the nuts and bolts of what you guys actually compound, what role do the actual substances that you may use in compounding play in your business activities? So let's consider shortage medications, combinations, new therapies, meeting client requests and needs, etc.
From our end, all of these have been within our decision making. Of course, the shortage medications are a big one. We have abilities to do sterile to sterile and API processing. So we do both. The shortage medications for sure. The bulk substance is a big one. And we have also had some really interesting therapeutic needs and developed products for, interesting therapeutic needs. And the interesting thing about 503B, the wonderful, it's such a cool business because everything we make comes from our client. Our client asks us, hey, Travis, can you make this fentanyl ropivacaine? Or Travis, can you make this? Or can you make that? Everything we make is what the hospitals ask us for. So it's not, I think from a business model standpoint, we don't have to go that creative route and figure out what do our clients want. We basically go to them and say, hey, what do you need today? What's your headache? What can you not get? I mean, what can a 503B facility do for you? And, they'll tell you, and they'll give you a list. And sometimes it's really long and sometimes real long and sometimes it's short. But that's what's neat about the industry is we just make things that our clients need. Period.
Yeah, I would say that we also see that exact same situation. Like there's no need to try to be creative. People will come out of the woodwork with things. I think where it becomes difficult, and we talked about this, I think, earlier on, is when you have clients that come to you and say, I want this thing that is not eligible. It's not on one of the category lists, right? It's not on category 1. It's not even on category 3. Nobody's ever heard of it before. I mean, maybe we've heard of it, but never like in a compounding setting, and they need it to be in X dosage form or however. So then there's the process of nominating. You can nominate that substance. And then it goes into this sort of black hole of unknowing where you may see it again, or you may not see it again, or it might be years before you see it again. I think we're seeing some movement now from the industry or the agency in terms of like reevaluating or dispositioning these nominations that they've received, because they've received, I think, lots and lots and lots, hundreds of them by now over the years. And we're starting to see some movement in terms of them actually looking at them again. And then they've also reached out to some other organizations to help with that process. But you can't know. So if your physician says, I need this for X, you can say, you can't necessarily do that for them. And so I think that's tricky and difficult. And there's always this desire to do it, but you can't. And so that becomes an area where it I think it falls a little bit short, because it would be better, always better, for that to be made under a GMP environment.
Got it. That's correct. How about COVID? So, we're all living in this odd environment right now. The pandemic has wreaked havoc on drug supply throughout the world, including in the United States. And have you at your facility been able to, FDA has its guidance documents on using compounders and outsourcing facilities to alleviate drug shortages for patients in hospitals throughout the United States. So how has that played into your business and strategic decision-making in the last 6 months or so, if at all?
Huge.
Okay.
It's huge. Yeah, well, I mean, one thing we want to do, strive as an industry, as a company, is to make sure we're taking care of patients. We're improving their health. We're treating their ailments. Fortunately, our company had a lot of products that were used in supportive care of COVID, and so we basically doubled, tripled our production of those products so we can meet those needs. So it's been huge, and we remind everyone what we're doing here, and that it's for these patients, and that they can make a difference.
Thanks. Kim?
We actually have not responded very much to the COVID. We don't really have, the way our current operation is set up, the capacity to do a lot of hospital products. So
Got it.
we've done a few here and there,
Yeah.
but
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think that might be our last question.
Yes.
Great. So Travis and Kimberly, I don't think we have any questions from our audience, but I do want to thank you both so much for participating today. And I'd also like to thank Pharmasalon for hosting such a unique and interesting a few days of sessions for our industry to continue to learn and educate ourselves and others, etc. So I'll leave it at that. Do you all have any final words?
nope.
No,
Thank you also
just
to Pharmasalon.
Yeah, thank you, Pharmasalon, and thank you for everyone who joined in. Hope it was a good presentation. And if you have any questions at all, please just reach out to us for sure.
Yes.
Thanks so much.